Hi, welcome to another episode of Latina Leadership Series, sister series to If Not You, Then Whom. So, today, did I introduce myself? My name is Angelica Casares. This is a sister series to If Not You, Then Who, Latina Leadership Series. Hi. On today's episode, I talked to my friend Pepe Estrada. We touch up on some pretty interesting conversations. Now, this is the first time I have a male guest on the Latina Leadership Series, where in the past I've talked to Latinas, but I was like, okay, let me incorporate some males to get the male perspective. I think this is a very important conversation because when I talk about Latinas succeeding, when I think about them succeeding, I think about them succeeding in spaces where their peers are. And the corporate space is where a lot of their peers are from all kinds of walks of life and backgrounds. And so this is a conversation that I was anticipating and I was looking forward to. So that's part of the conversation here on this episode. We also uncover a reality check that puts a twist on what life is really like for some Latinas in the US. And lastly, the phrase that has been heard around the country: Latinos are not monolith. I think we've all known that from the Latino side, but it's nice to know that the country sees that and understands that at this point. So if you like to listen to the conversation, I invite you to join on in as the conversation takes place here up next. All right. So, Pepe, usually I let the other person introduce themselves, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to do so. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Pepe Estrada, born, raised, and educated in Peru. I've been in the United States for about almost 24 years. I had the fortune of meeting my wife in grad school. After finishing grad school, we both went to Peru and spent there 4 years. And then when our son was born, we came to the US. And when I came to the US, I realized in part who I was, right? I thought I was going to be an American, but I realized I was turning into a Hispanic American. That's part of who I am. I am a dad, a husband, a Walmart associate, someone that cares for our community deeply after quite a learning curve that I'm happy to share at the right time. And I'm really focused on Angelica, on making sure that I'm doing whatever I can to make the place I occupy a little bit better than what I found it.
Yeah, I heard you say that a few times. What does that mean? Can you emphasize on that a little bit? What do they say? Usually it's leave something cleaner than what you first got there or something like that. That's like a
Yeah,
saying, right? So every time you say that, that's what it reminds me of. But can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
sure, happy to. And when I say that, it includes that, right? So it's not uncommon for me to be out or around at a park or walking through the woods on the trail, 9 times out of 10 with my wife Denise, and picking up trash to leave the place a little bit cleaner. But it also means doing the best that I can to make sure that I help, in particular, my children learn from my experience so they can do a little bit better than I can. Make sure that I am trying to do my best to remove barriers for them. And when it comes to my mentees, the same thing, right? I try to share with them mistakes and errors that I have made that because I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And help them prevent those mistakes and errors, help them learn from my experience so their lives are a little bit better at the same age that I was when I was making those mistakes. So hopefully that helps them get to where they want to get to a little bit faster. So that's what I mean. I mean, it's in the broadest sense of the word. I try to make sure that I'm helpful in making it easier for those that come behind me to achieve their goals and dreams. And yes, it does include, cleaning a park if that's that,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to make sure that it's better than how I found it.
I just heard you say that usually through your experiences and sharing, so they don't make the same mistakes. By chance, do you have an experience that you can share?
Happy to share, Angelica. So I was, like I shared, I was in the United States attending grad school, and I spent 4 years at NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I met a lot of people during that time. Then Denise and I, my wife and I, we moved to Peru, and I worked in Peru for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
When our son was born, we moved back to the US to give him opportunity. And then I needed to find a job. And that's a lesson that I learned the lesson that I learned very quickly was that during those 4 years, I did not stay in touch with the people I met at NC State or through NC State. I met a lot of good people, a lot of very interesting people. I didn't stay in touch with them. So 4 years later, I was an unknown person. I did not have a network.
So even though you got your degree,
Even though I got my degree, I didn't have a network of
Okay.
people that I had met, Angelica. So that was a big lesson for me. And I share that with my mentees and with my children. It is important for you, no matter where you are in life, to build a network of people.
Mhm.
And to make sure that in building that network, you're trying to help your network as much as you can, because I believe that you need to first give
Mhm.
before you receive. But to do that, you have to meet people and you have to build relationships and you have to maintain the relationships.
Yeah.
That was a mistake that I made. And
Mhm.
I share that with mentees and my children, like I said, to make sure that they understand that it's very important as soon as they can to start building that network.
Okay. So networking for me, is important. Like that's my everyday job. That's what
Mhm.
I do. That's how I kind of work. But you gave an importance of it. How did you? So you came back to work. Um, I know your story as to like where you got, but it's an interesting. Can I get a little bit of it? So
Sure.
to start your network, yeah.
Sure, happy to share. So what I didn't share was what I did in grad school, right? In grad school at NC State, what I did was get a PhD in economics. So I have a doctorate in economics. I went back to Peru and I worked for a project with very small farmers to help them improve their farming operation and market their product in Peru, in Europe, and in the US. And it was amazing work. I lived with the farmers because I believed that the only way they would trust me was if I actually lived with them.
Yeah.
So I did not live in the city. I lived in the middle of nowhere. We came to the US, and because I didn't have a network, it was very hard for me to find a job. And I have never let a degree or a title get in the way of who I am and what I need to do.
Mhm.
So for a whole year, I did odd jobs to make sure that we had, money for food and clothes. We were lucky that my in-laws allowed us to stay in their house, so we lived in one room, Denise, our son, and myself. So I did odd jobs. One of those that I remember very fondly was fondly and not so much. It was translating. So I did translations, and I got paid pennies to the word.
Yeah.
And I also did interpretation. And one of the clients that the company I worked for had was back then the Immigration Service.
Mm.
And I helped interpret hearings, asylum hearings. Tough for me and painful to hear the different stories of people, mostly from Central America, that were asking for asylum for reasons that caused them to fear for their lives.
Reasons we talk about today still.
Reasons we still talk about today. That is correct. And eventually, almost a year after being here, a person from State Farm Insurance called me. That's one of the companies that I had applied to. A Latina, I'll never forget her, Diana. She called me and said, "Hey, we would like to interview you." So I was happy. I went to the interview. I thought things went well. I've been through some evaluations. And then she called me and said, "Listen, I have a job for you, but you're overqualified. And I don't want to be disrespectful. So if you turn it down, that's fine." She said, "Well, the job is to be an hourly person in our auto claims business." And I said, "Diana, I'm thankful. Thank you. I'll take it." I said, I told her the same thing I shared with you, right? That I believe that degrees should not get in the way of me doing what I need to do. And that's how I started. I started as an hourly employee at State Farm Insurance. I'm thankful for the opportunity that State Farm and a Latina gave me. I worked myself up the ranks, and eventually I started in Pennsylvania, and eventually I ended up in their main home office in Bloomington, Illinois, managing in the public affairs function, managing State Farm's corporate relations with the Latino community on a national level. And that work, Angelica, is what put me on Walmart's radar. And then eventually they recruited me away from State Farm. And I've now been with the company for a total of about 16 years. And I say a total because I did leave the company for 13 months, I'm sorry. But I've been with Walmart almost a total of 17 years.
17 years?
Almost a total of 2004. Almost a total of 17 years.
Wow. So
Crazy.
how long were you with State Farm?
About 7 years.
About 7 years. That's so 7 years. It's a fast track to move up the rank, the ladder, right? Because you had education. I think that's one of the topics that I want to cover a little later. Education, the importance of education, especially around the Latino community, period, and the Latinas themselves. So you understand what representation is, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How important is representation, and do you really see it as absolute? Is it something that has to happen? Me and Juan, my husband, have had arguments over representation and what it looks like and what it sounds like. And is it just putting a person of color in a group to make it a little bit diverse, right? We call this token diversity, right? Or selective diversity. When you cherry select certain people so it could fit the culture, so it could fit the corporate culture, so it can fit something. So there's not too much disruptiveness, or if they pull back or they push back, it's not going to be really not pushing back. They're gonna do maybe, right? Maybe so. So when they have to go and say, well, we know we have a diverse group. It's like, no, you have like one or two people within like 25 executives or corporate people who make these decisions. How important is representation?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, Angelica. And I'll say that first of all, I do not believe in token representation. Right?
Okay.
But I do believe in representation, and I believe in representation for the following reason. And I'm talking about my corporate experience. And I guess my training has to do with it too, right? As an economist, I'm very aware of market trends and where the market is going and how the United States is changing from a demographic point of view, right? We know that in the span of maybe 10 to 20 years at the most, it's going to be a majority multicultural country. I mean, there's no stopping that. The demographic change is happening as we speak. So when I look at that, and I've been fully aware of that for years, I understand that for business to be successful, companies, business owners need to understand their customer.
So if you're listening into this podcast on IGTV or maybe Apple Podcasts or maybe Stitcher or Spotify or any of those other great places that the podcast has been uploaded, I please invite you to give me a rating, a rating, a review, or maybe a comment, a share, a like. So like that, this series gets to places in the ears of people who maybe need to hear it, or maybe you disagree with me, or maybe you agree with me. I love your feedback. Let me know what you think, and please keep enjoying the conversation. Mm-hmm.
So to be able to understand the customer, I need to have the awareness of hiring people that can educate me about that new customer. How does that customer think? Why do they celebrate? What makes them sad? What are their hopes for the future? Where is it that they want to go? What do they need? Mm-hmm. And I believe that in looking for representation, you look for talented people that are the best in their field that can help me understand how that customer thinks, how they behave, what they want. And that way I can anticipate their needs and offer them the best experience possible, whether you're an insurance company, a retailer, it doesn't matter what kind of business you are, a bodega, tienda, restaurant. I think you having the ability to hire the best talent that walks like your customer, that looks like your customer, that thinks like your customer will help you win in the market. That's the representation that I think makes a lot of sense for business.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely thank you for that. Actually, that's amazing. That's an amazing answer. That's spot on. I think for me, representation starts like at the table. It starts at who you're eating with and the conversations that you're actually having. What are they saying that not only you can connect with or that you can better understand? And if you don't understand, to take the time, because it doesn't happen overnight. And I definitely understand that. I understand that to better understand is it's not a one-sided conversation, first of all, and two, it's not just like meeting me for one time and then you're going to know exactly what a first generation Mexican American is going to sound like from Houston, Texas, in the inner city girl. Like there's no way. There's no way. We have to have maybe perhaps multiple conversations, and that we laugh about this. Actually, friends of ours is that a lot of those important conversations take around food, and that's
Mhm.
culturally here in the States, especially, um, and across the world, is that important conversations or authentic conversations happen around the table, and it's usually around food. Um, so going back to representation, the election happened, and everybody talks about this special word, monolith. We're not all monolith. It's like, yeah, we knew that. I knew that. I knew years ago that I wasn't being represented. Yeah, there was Latinas, but there was certain kind of Latinas, and like I said, it was sometimes those who fit the culture. A person who talked like me, sounded like me, came from my background, wasn't being represented at all, not in commercials, not in conversation. I would go even to where like we would go to conferences and they would like have a panel of speakers, and every time it never failed. It wasn't somebody who maybe looked like me, but nobody who like actually represented me. But they were talking about my topic. Like I heard them, and I told you this before that when I was younger, I used to look at women's surnames, right? If it was Gonzalez, it was something I was like, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me. But then they would always talk about their story, and I was never like people like me. And then so when I was going through the data, and it was girls, and it turns out we're largely like we're a big population, and I was like, oh man, but I'm not up there. Like I'm not up there. And the older I got, I'm like, I can't be crazy. I can't be crazy. And sure enough, the data was coming through. And this is all in terms of the census, right? The census was telling me that we're a huge number. And then I was going through other data and other like research, and it was like, oh, by the way, you might be the largest representation, but you're not up there in management. And I was like, what? So I it was like it broke my heart a little bit to know that and understand that. And so, and like I said, me and Juan have had multiple arguments over over these conversations. And I went to him and I was like, look, Juan, I'm not crazy. Like I'm not like I anyway. Anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox about that. But did you want to like add to that?
I think what you're saying is true. I think, 'cause I'll give you an example. A few years back now, because my daughter's now in college, she came back from school and she was a little bit upset, and I could tell she was upset. So I asked her what's going on, and that day they had career day, and she said, "Daddy, none of the people that talked to us about careers looked like me. I could have volunteered to do it, right? And I didn't." So I think when it comes to us being represented, I think it's a two-way street. I think it's one, holding organizations accountable to making sure that they find the qualified talent that looks like us, because the talent is out there, but also us having the courage to step up and using our voice to say, I want to do this. Let me do this. This is what I want to do. You know. So that's what I'm saying. It's a two-way street. What you're saying to me is very real for many different reasons, including what I had just shared with you, right? The experience I had with my
Yeah,
daughter.
personal experience with your
Yeah.
daughter and what yeah. Yeah. Um when I talk about like representation, I look at my nieces and I think to myself like I I can see themselves I can see myself in them, and they come from the same neighborhood, they come from the same background, although they're second generation, right? They have the the ability that their parents now speak English, right? Now we can show up to the schools. Now we can talk to the administrators or the teachers or the principal, and we can stand up for ourselves. We don't need an interpreter, and we don't have to feel shy about it. And we don't, many times my mom would go to school and she never wanted to go, period. She didn't want to go because she didn't really understand. And she was just tell us, like, just be good, please, for the love of God, just pass your class and be good. Like, she never really cared too much if we passed it with A's or B's or C's or D's. Like, it didn't matter as long as we weren't getting in trouble and as long as we weren't getting called into the office. And not only because of that, but because she like worked graveyard shift. And so she had to sleep during the day as we were at school. But the times that she did go, like, it was always, I either had to interpret or somebody else had to come in. And it was never, so I hold on to a lot of that still. I would call it trauma, but I don't think it's that severity of trauma, just those unwellness thoughts of like the past of what it looked like for me. And so when I go to these conferences and they say they have a diversity array of diverse people, and knowing and understanding that the largest group in the United States is Mexican Americans, and I'm like, I'm not there. Out of all the your audience, I'm not there. Like, I'm not there. Like, I see what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to do, but I'm not there. And I'm not saying we have to be everywhere, but somewhere might be nice. Like at some point, in some position, in some leadership, which is what I'm getting to, in some leadership position that we can say, oh, by the way, again, we're going back to that word monolith, right? Everybody discovered, oh my God, Hispanics aren't monolith. Yes, we knew that, but here we are, right? Like, how should it sound, and what should it sound like now that everybody knows that we're not all the same, right? Different, the way and we've had this conversation about the way we immigrated here, or the way we migrated here, I guess would be a better term, looks different for even like you and you, Pepe, and my mom. Like, I was born here. I was lucky enough to be born here. Out of my siblings, I am lucky enough, the lucky one, to be born here. And so my opportunities are even different from my sister, which is why I started this and a lot of other projects, because after the death of my sister, like, I knew that it couldn't be just that. And unfortunately for her, before her death, she was always like, there was always this fear that they were gonna, like, her residency was gonna be pulled from her, right? And I never feared that. I never had that fear. I felt I had a small superpower over them. And so it is different. It's different for all of us. And some things that part of the group, the Latino Hispanic group, fears that the other side isn't going to fear. And unfortunately, isn't basic needs like roof over your head. We all had roofs over our head, but we never feared like somebody was gonna like take something from us, And it was always that constant conversation, that constant topic. And so when they come at the angles of like Hispanics, I'm like, whoa, hold on. I see what you're saying, but not todos, right? So when I go to these conferences, when I go to LULAC, and when I go to what is the other one?
The Unidos US conference?
Yes. Like when I go to Unidos, like I like the fact that it's complete Hispanics, and we're all having different dialects, different conversations in different forms, right? We're all talking about some things, but at the end of the day, we all know we're talking to move in a direction. And I hope that's still a conversation that can still take place even now, even at the turn of 2020 election. Again, here I am on my soapbox. Pepe, you gotta stop me from like talking and going on and on about these things. So let's go to the Latina leaders. I have a question for you. I have two, and maybe you can answer them and tell me what you think, or if you do have an answer for it. First question is: have you heard or know about today's Latinas through partnerships with institutions like LULAC and Unidos? What's the conversation? Because I know you're back there. I know you're having the conversations with them. What do they say about Latinas?
Great question. So you're right. I do have the privilege, because it is a privilege, right? To be able to have conversations with national leaders like the ones that lead LULAC, Cindy Benavides, or Unidos US, Janet Murguia, and others. And there is a lot of conversation about Latina leadership and Latinas and the role that they can and should be playing in helping our nation be a stronger nation and helping our community be a stronger community. So know that that is top of mind for national leaders. I think we can do a better job. I think we need to do a better job. I don't think we are as a community yet where we want to be. It's become better than it was in the year, well, almost 20 years ago when I started working with State Farm on public affairs issues. It has improved a lot, but it's not yet where it needs to be. Because there are some basic issues that we haven't solved yet. And it has to do with the fact that not all Latinos are equal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're alluding to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So often we forget that there are Latinas across this nation that are single moms that face divorce or that their husbands pass away. And because of some cultural norms that we have, those Latinas have not learned how to manage the finances of the home or have not had employment. And then all of a sudden, because the male side of the equation is out of the picture, that Latina is in danger of becoming homeless very quickly. And we don't talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about helping Latinas succeed in college, helping Latinas get into college, helping Latinas get into STEM now, helping Latinas get into MBA schools, helping Latinas progress in the corporate world. But I personally feel that we don't do a lot about talking about equipping Latinas with very basic skills that'll help them in those times of need, when to prevent them from being homeless, from not having health insurance, from not having food on the table. Those things, as you know, still happen today.
Yeah. We've had the conversation privately about like where my experience within the last 10 years and how things are just it's unfortunate that I came to the realization a little not too late. I mean, fortunately, I'm still in a position where I can make a difference for myself personally. But not a lot of Latinas like go through this, and those especially who are less of who can go into bankruptcy quickly, right?
Yeah.
Whose resources can dwindle quickly and fast within a couple of months after the death of their significant other or the divorce or whatever it may be. That it can happen quickly. And you end up in places, unfortunate places that are hard to like crawl to pull yourself out of if you need to. I was one of those statistics who just not that my husband, not that Juan, like overseen everything, but I noticed and I was like, I'm not gonna survive. Like this isn't gonna be for like there's gonna be no like I don't know, having to move out of your house that you lived in for the last 10, 15, 20 years or having to, and losing that much because you didn't take the time to take care of yourself also in the process, right? And that's financial. That's independence. That's autonomy. That's you being you and taking care of yourself in addition to everything else. And we all say this. We Latinas have a lot of on their plates, right? Trying to change statistic norms and trying to get educated and try to educate others about it and trying to do this and trying to raise your kids at the same times and make sure you're pleasing like your culture or pleasing your parents and your grandparents all at the same time. It's like a huge task to take on. But largely a lot of them are taking that task on.
They are. In spite of those odds, like you said, Latinas take all of that on. They will continue to raise their children. They will continue to find a way to provide. And you do a lot of research, and you know this. There's more Latinos enrolled in college today than 15 years ago.
Yes, there are 60% at this point. I think
Yeah.
Latinas outnumber Latinos
Yeah,
specifically. But we go back to, at least, it's a choice. And I've told you this before.
it
Being
is a choice.
educated should be a
That's right.
choice. Like if you want to be quote unquote taken care of, that should be a choice. You should have your education just in case. Just in case, right? We all have that just in case money underneath our mattress or underneath our pillows because, Latinos, right? You carry
Right.
cash in your house, right? We all have that just in case, but we don't think about, okay, what about when that money runs out, then what do you do? Like, what do you do? And networking, like you said, is one of the biggest things. And what else do you want to do? Being involved in your community, making sure you're out there, making sure you're being seen and visible, making sure you're being represented somewhere, making sure your kids need to do and get where they need to be. Anyway, I can go down and down and down that rabbit hole. So the reason I brought you specifically here, Pepe, it's because I want to talk to you about the rise of Latinas in leadership positions in corporate world.
Hmm.
In your experience or what you have seen, do you feel like Latinas, one, all Latinas are being represented, right? Because not just one Latina, right? There's many of us from many countries, from many origins, and so on and so forth. Do you feel like they're taking up those leadership positions? And what do you think? And if they're not, because I know the answer, and if they're not, what can we do to help?
Ah, you know the answer.
I just wanted to make sure I asked it. Well, you tell me your experience because you're there.
So my experience is that it's getting a little bit better. It's not where it
Yeah.
needs to be.
Yeah.
I think there, yes, today we see more Latinas from different backgrounds in positions of leadership. However, personally, I feel we're not where we need to be. I think there are a lot of very talented Latinas that, for many different reasons, don't have those positions of leadership. And you ask, what is it that we can do to help with that? And it's interesting that I've been having a similar conversation with a few people this week. I think one of the things that we need to do and recognize is that we're not a monolithic community,
Correct.
right? We come from very different backgrounds,
Correct.
different nationalities, different levels of income. And we need to acknowledge that. And we also need to understand that when we are in this country, we are perceived by people from outside our community as one. The assumption is that we're one.
Hmm.
So, based on that, I believe that we need to find a way to network within our community and help each other out. When we talk about Latinas in leadership and helping Latinas access leadership, one of the things that we should do a better job of is in giving those Latinas feedback. We see what they do, we see how they act, and sometimes we, the proverbial we, right? We we know that what they're doing is not going to work,
Hmm.
but we let them walk off the cliff and we don't say a word, right?
Yeah.
I think that needs to stop. And I'm generalizing. It doesn't always happen, but you see those things happen.
Yeah.
So I think as a community, we need to change that behavior. And if I see Angelica doing something that I think is not going to work and is going to be not well seen by the supervisor, I should pull Angelica aside and say, "Hey, Angelica, let me share some feedback with you. You
Hmm.
know, I think I know what you want to accomplish. How about if you try doing it this way?"
Hmm.
Um, I don't see us doing a lot of that. And I think it's time for us to have those candid conversations amongst us to help each other out and help, like I said, pass our experience to others so they don't make the same mistakes and they're better equipped to compete for those positions.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, I'll share this with you that not just Latinas, but I mean, a Latina allowed me to be today where I am.
Hmm.
I shared that story with you. A Latina was the person that offered me the hourly position at State Farm. And
She
I
was
will
your
always,
catalyst. Yeah.
it was my catalyst. I will always be grateful to the. And my experience has been in the corporate world that the best supervisors that I've had, by and large, have been female.
Hmm.
They're amazing leaders, and So I owe it to them to make sure that we're finding a way to help them get to where they need to go. So I think we need to do a better job in affording them feedback. We need to do a better job in advocating for them. So if someone would ask me, what do you think of Angelica? I should be in a position to say very quickly a few positive things that about you and things that you've been able to accomplish to be an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, behind closed doors, I'll give you the feedback that I need to give you, but I won't do that outside of that room. Right?
Yeah. So in addition to mentorship, sponsorship, but also being an advocate in front of like others, in front of actually being like, you know what, so and so can actually do it. I've seen her do this. And in reference to the first part of the conversation, the first thing that you said, I think that's amazing to be able to put somebody aside and tell them, hey, it looks like this is what you want to accomplish. But it's a two-way conversation, right? You can also hear them on their side and be like, when they tell you, oh, that this is what I want to accomplish, it can also be like, oh, okay, well, this is why I'm doing the way I'm doing it. And
Yes.
maybe you can also introduce that conversation as to like, you know what, that
Yes.
actually makes sense. It makes sense that you're doing it like this. We should go together and figure out why this is working the way it's working and not just that it doesn't work for management. Right? Because
Yes, exactly right. This afternoon, I had a conversation with a mentee, a Latina mentee from another company.
Mhm.
And I think you were in that conversation because I was giving her feedback on some things. And then I stopped myself and said, okay, wait a second. So, and then I asked the question, right? Now, share with me again, where is it that you want to go?
Mhm.
And you're absolutely right, Angelica. She shared with me where she wants to go, and I said, okay. So based on that, let me reformulate my feedback.
Mhm.
Then what you're doing makes sense. I think you just need to tweak a few things here and keep moving in that direction. Right? You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Sometimes as males, we forget to ask our female counterpart, where is it that you want to go?
Mhm.
What are you trying to accomplish? And we go straight into problem solving mode.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah, well, I've noticed as Latinas and having multiple like jobs, right? Sometimes we even get part-time jobs to fulfill the needs of whatever. There's a
Yes.
lot of streamlining that we end up doing, and I think people forget that. I think people forget that we navigate relationships with our parents, our partners, our friends, our siblings, our kids. Like we streamline things in a certain way, and there's a lot that we can give. There's a lot more that we can do for a corporate space, even though people might not see it like that. It's just a matter of like habitual things that probably need to take day by day, and this is the way this happens. But please, we tend to, like I said, we tend to streamline things, and so there's a lot that we can still like provide, as opposed to just like, oh, this is the good old boy way of doing things and this is the way it's always been done,
Right.
right? It's like, well, that's not efficient, and you're losing opportunity, you're losing time, you're losing money. Like, what are y'all doing out there? I love the part that pulling somebody aside and maybe having the conversation. Conversations are key. Conversations can save lives, literally. Of like, just like, hey, can we understand each other? And among Hispanics, those conversations need to happen. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, we're not having these dialogues back and forth. And especially like if we're all going to be in the same room, where we're all coming to the same conventions, we're all coming to the same platforms to have these conversations, like let's within ourselves have a conversation, so like that we can better understand. And we're not just like, oh, that's just, stop with the cherry picking, stop with the oh, she fits the culture. It's like, okay, yeah, but that's not. How about we try? We just try the conversation.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We're forgetting the art of conversation, like you said, and having those candid conversations, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure that we understand each other.
Yeah, for sure. Understanding makes a lot of difference in many, many relationships and networking. If you're gonna network, you need to be able to do that. you need to be able to have the conversation if you're going to network, not just sit down and listen, or if you speak often and speak over people, that's also not going to help either. But Pepe, this was an amazing conversation. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one last question, and it's usually what I'd be asking the other individuals. Do you have any advice?
A few things. One, yes, I mean, great question. Network. I think it's very important for all of us to grow our network. I think the second thing that we need to do is continue to learn. I've worked in managing relationships with the Latino community for a couple of corporations for a few years. I'll be the first to tell you that I'm not the expert. I don't know the community. I try to learn every day. I'm reading a book right now on Latino leadership by Juana Bordas. It's an amazing book.
Really? I need to write that one down too. Okay.
So we need to continue to learn. We need to develop the art of conversation again, like you said, and we need to support each other. We need to support leaders like you. I know you don't think yourself as a leader, but you are one of our leaders. So as one of our leaders, we need to be humble enough to sit down with the Angelicas of this world and say, okay, help me understand. Teach me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me where is it that I can be helpful. We need to have that level of humbleness. And at the same time, we need to find our voice. Mm-hmm. It's not sufficient with us being the largest minority group in this country. But if we don't know how to use our voice in a way that that will lift our families and our community, mm-hmm. then having the numbers is meaningless.
Yeah, we need to move past the participation. What is it? The ribbon, right? It shouldn't be just a participation ribbon. We need to actually be there.
We need to be there, and then we need to help each other out by doing simple things like, are we doing business with businesses owned by our community? So there are different things that we need to do that I would hope all of us start modeling, because that's going to help our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities be a little bit stronger. And guess what? That's going to help this nation be a stronger nation. I mean, if we think of ourselves as Americans, I think that the information that we're sharing here mm-hmm. will help this nation as well. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, if we're going to be the majority, I'm assuming it's going to help the nation. I mean, that's the way the numbers talk, right? I'm not an economics person, but I mean, sir, tell me, is that the way it works?
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I share with my mentees, Angelica, that I share with your audience is, we're not all in the same stages of life, but mm-hmm. some of us eventually break through and have a comfortable life. So then my challenge to young people, to people my age is, okay, so you accomplished something. Recognize that you did it on the shoulders of other people that came before you and maybe you never met. So now it's your time to give back. And you can give back by cutting a check. You can give back by being a volunteer. Or you can give back by lending your voice to things that need to be changed, right? So there are different ways of giving back, but please do give back, because we need to show that we care.
Yeah, giving back. For me, as of lately, it is money, and two, it's time. Time is essential for everybody, and giving your time works wonders for volunteering and stuff like that. Like, your time is so valuable to somebody else, and sometimes that's even more valuable than money itself. They just need your time. They have it sorted out. Things are working. They just need sometimes the manpower, or they need somebody who has the access to the information, or who is the information to be able to move that forward. But yes, volunteering. So one last question before I let you go. Can I get you, Pepe? Can I get you to commit to helping Latinas to get into those leadership positions?
Yes,
as a male, as our what would you call it? As our male supporters. Can I get you to commit?
Absolutely, yes. I commit to being an ally for Latinas.
Nice. Awesome. So there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us on this Latina Leadership series. Pepe, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Angelica. Thank you. Thanks for your leadership.
Bueno, what did you think? What did you think? Did you agree with us? Did you disagree with us? Do you think we completely missed the mark? Do you think we did not add or say some of the things? It was a very short conversation. There's only so much time that that I can upload, that I can share with you. So if you like part of the podcast, oh my God. So if you like the conversation and you like what you hear, let me know. Let me know what you think. I want to continue doing this series, and hopefully it's still at its infancy, and we can keep growing, and we can keep growing together, and we can get into places, like I said, to the ears of people who need to listen to it. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation.